A lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. Yeah. A lot of people made a lot of money. Carriers went bankrupt as they thought going down the road and their bank accounts were going to be overflowing with cash. And we've been in this freight recession for a few years now.
Welcome to This Week in Trucking. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Dickinson. He is the president and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions and co-founder of the Freight Fraud Task Force. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I can't wait for this conversation.
Let's get into it. What drew you to working in logistics and advocating against freight fraud?
Yeah, that's a two-point question. So my wife got me involved into logistics. It wasn't something that was on my radar that I got to work in logistics. I actually had a roofing company, and make a long story short, back in 78, 79, I sold it, didn't know what I wanted to do. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, saw this job and said, hey, Krups of North America, which is owned by Mullinex now, is looking for a warehouseman. What do you think? Why not? The rest is history. I just started learning everything that I possibly could, became a sponge, and knew that I didn't want to be a warehouseman for the rest of my life. So I just kept on climbing and leveling up and started getting into these very complicated logistics operations, like putting myself in the harm's way, because it's in this industry, it's great to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable in order to learn more. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last 45 years for sure. And did I fail? Yeah, I failed miserably. And that's how I learned. When you fall on your face, you got to learn to pick yourself up and take a little bit of a beating. And I had great mentors, coaches, disciplinarians, very good disciplinarians. I used to get my butt kicked a lot. That's all part of the journey in logistics. It's very complicated. It's very demanding. Every day you get blindsided with a question or something that comes up that you least expected because you're not prepared. That's how fast the industry is moving.
Tell me about when you learned about freight fraud. What was your first experience?
I never had one. And when I say that, that's why I started up and was a co-founder of the Freight Fraud Task Force. In my 45-year career, I've never faced double brokering, theft, or any kind of deceptive practices that are out there. I never faced it. And I didn't. What's really interesting, Caroline, is that back then we didn't have the tools that we have today. They weren't even thought of. They weren't even a little blink of the eye or something that, hey, we got to do this. It wasn't back then. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have anything, just fax machines and Nextels and all of that. And right now, it's fortunate but unfortunate. It's a double-edged sword. We have too much overlap in the industry when it comes to technology and fighting fraud. Everybody has their own perspective of how they want to fight against it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of content that's out there on LinkedIn, no names mentioned. But when I read that stuff, it's actually creating loopholes and roadmaps for the bad guys in order to circumvent and find their workaround. It's just like when a fraudster, double broker gets arrested and they go to court. They're in front of the judge and the judge starts asking questions and the defendants and all that. And they're like, how did he get caught? We did this and we were watching him for that. And we had patrols over here. That's like a roadmap. That's a loophole because usually they bring in their entourage of people that sit in the courtroom with them. And they're like, aha, you know what? That's how he did it. And so they just keep on reinventing themselves and finding those little holes, nook and crannies to slide right in there and take advantage of it. The Freight Fraud Task Force covers all areas of the industry. If you name it, we're there. We're still building it. As a matter of fact, we just legalized. We have lawyers. We have legal representation. The current board and their members being directors of certain divisions within the Freight Fraud Task Force. We have over 420 years worth of experience. That's a lot of experience. And we're building it. We're continuously building it, and we meet about twice a week. The founders meet on a Tuesday, and then the members and directors meet on a Thursday. And then we just discuss the strategies on what we're going to do. We don't talk about how we do it. We talk about our achievements, because we don't want to let the bad guys out there, which we call the scumbags. You probably heard that before too. And that's pretty much it on that side.
So how do you thread that needle then? Because you don't want to give the bad guys too many ideas. But from my perspective, I want to let carriers know what they should be looking out for when they're booking freight, right? Something as simple as go to their website, check out the phone number that they have posted, call them, make sure that the load is legitimate, make sure it's actually from them. That kind of advice, I think, is pretty foolproof. You're not going to, there's not a workaround that someone's going to be able to hack the phone system of the whole brokerage. But so I wonder what are some of the advice or educational nuggets that you want to leave carriers with that doesn't compromise what you're trying to do with the freight?
Right. And that's a great question. That was a golden nugget that you just said. Basically, our vision is to foster a safe, transparent, and compliant freight industry through investigation, evaluation, education, and collaboration. We vet all these carriers that come to us because it could be a bad guy out there, a fraudulent carrier that's trying to find out information. So we'll do facial recognition. We'll do the big background check on them, dig in, see if they have any freight guards on them or anything. You name it, we'll research it before we give that information out. If they're a good guy and they want to know how to protect themselves, then we'll do like webinars and we'll do face-to-face. We'll do podcasts, all that, just to help them out on the education side, where we'll go right there and we'll talk about what kind of problems are you having. And then we'll send the SME, the subject matter expert in that specific area of the Freight Fraud Task Force, because we want to hire, it's volunteer, right? So we're not really hiring. It's people who have the same passion as we do that wants to drive out the bad guys. So those people will take their committee or subcommittee members, whoever they may be, and they will go there because they know that better than anybody else. We want people who are smarter than us. That's the only way that you're going to succeed, right? And plus, we get to learn that in a collaborative effort as a whole, the people that are running the Freight Fraud Task Force, they're learning from each other and they're asking those questions. I didn't know that or whatever. And we talk about that. We're like, so where's our strategy where we don't have to tell people how we do it, but they get that information. So that's part of it, what we do. There's another thing too. We were on WFAA, which is an affiliate of WABC News, where we uncovered PPOBs, which is principal place of business in Texas and other areas as well, where there were like almost 700 companies that were working out of a very small building. Not so good. We're working directly with the FMCSA. We're trying to make changes. We are going national. When I say national, we're going to have a point person in every single state that has direct relationships or contact with the governor, senator, congressman to help us push the narrative, not in one state, but all the states. Because the more coverage that we have, the more that we're able to push our narrative and what we're all about, plus to get those sponsors, the big hitters, the insurance companies. One guy who's on our force, Tommy Rook, you can look him up if you will. He started the MCIEF, which is the Motor Carrier Information Education Foundation. He's been in the business for 60 years. So he's a co-founder as well on the insurance side of it. And I know you're in a factoring company and all of that. I'm sure that you talk to each other, not specifically Tommy, but it's a big impact on the insurance company because all those deceptive practices and fraudulent activities that are out there trickle down to you and I, who we are the consumers. So you figure with all the advanced technology and tools today that are even attacking cybersecurity as well, right? Because you got the digitalization of freight now, where you're getting the attacks through the net and that they're getting that crucial data and they're forging bill of ladings and all this other kind of stuff. So the thing is that it's tough. I don't want to go to the full extent of it, but it's difficult. It's difficult to say the least on that. The biggest question that I ask everybody out there is, if your tools are so good, why is it escalating? Why is it escalating? All right. Because if you're on top of that and you're really having an impact, it should be de-escalating than escalating to monumental figures out there that are just beyond, it just blows your mind. It's just crazy. So what's happening? What's happening? What are they trying to do that they're not actually doing?
And it reminds me a little bit about, say you're on a boat and your boat gets a leak and water starts rushing in. You can invent a bucket, but if the water is rushing in so much faster than the bucket can pour the water out, you're going to sink. So those tools that we have, they might be part of it, but they're clearly not sufficient. And actually, one of the most low-tech tools is something that we at Bobtail will just use as evidence when carriers do get caught up in fraudulent situation. If we learn about it fast enough, we can call the real broker and say, hey, that person that you've been in touch with, they didn't deliver your load.
No.
Our guy delivered the load. And you know how I know? Because there's only one person in the world right now that has the physical copy of the BOL, and it's my guy, not your guy.
Yeah.
So here's the proof of that. And that's actually even the lowest tech part of it. It's who has the physical piece of paper, and how do you prove that?
Yeah, that's just the whole thing. Because I've worked for enterprise shippers most of my life. I was on that side for 37 years, and I never had anything that was stolen because of what I implemented and safeguard. When the drivers came in, we took a picture of them. We took a picture of the back of the truck with the product in there, and we had them sign the bill of lading. We had them count the freight, the chimney blocks that were in each pallet. They had a list. We gave them a form, and this pallet won 35 boxes. We had them count everything because our freight was so expensive. Some of the loads were $2 to $3 million loads. That's a lot. You talk about geofencing, you talk about reroute designs. Even though you're going to the same company, you want to go down the same road twice. You would do a workaround. You wouldn't leave at the same time every single day or different days. Geofencing, make sure that your gas tanks are completely filled, that you went to the bathroom, that you can't stop within 250 miles, that when you go out there, you do pre-check inspections on your trucks, walk around with my dock supervisor, put the seal on the back of the truck, do the snap test on it, make sure that it is right, seal on tack on the back on the bill of lading with the number on it. There's so many different things that you can do to prevent the fraud from happening. Checking their VIN numbers on the Accord insurance policy, looking at driver's license. I could just ramble on and on. But those are some of the type of preventative measures that you can implement as a shipper to protect yourself. That's like a lost art, because a lot of the shippers out there, their primary focus is on saving money. They don't vet the carriers the way that they should, because let's face it, there's those bad guys that are out there that are doing the cheap freight. They're the iffy kind of guys.
Saving money in the sense that it's very short term.
Yeah. And plus they're doing it for so cheap that they're neglecting the periodic maintenance on their vehicles and pushing it. Again, right. Another insurance problem, a nuclear verdict, a thermonuclear verdict, like the one that's down in Texas, $460 million verdict. That things that are preventable, you take. The thing in this industry, Caroline, is that deceptive people will do deceptive things in desperate times. That's a fact. We are in a desperate time right now. The economy is sunk. People need to put food on their table. If they got an offer that they can't refuse, they might bite. They might bite. Another thing is, you know what a TWIC card is as well, right? Yep. It's transportation worker identification card, right? So you have brokers out there. What's a definition of a transportation worker, right? A transportation worker is anybody that touches freight or moves freight or does any kind of operations around freight. My idea, and I'll be more than happy to share this, and I just had a conversation with a senator last night in New Jersey, and I said we should level down, not level up. Level down means to the broker level, not to the brokerages, and have them issue those brokers TWIC cards. It's identification card that they can be able to put those numbers on each transaction, so you know who's accountable for that specific issue. If it went to double brokering, or if it's a theft or any kind of deceptive practice, that card, facial recognitions or whatever is right on that bill of lading. It's on that transaction. So it's like tracking a fraudulent activity from Asia or Europe or whatever, where you can track that IP address, where it came from. There's just so many different ways. I hate to use this thing, but I always do, to skin a cat. You have to really outthink the thinkers. If you've been in the business and you have that practical experience, not to say I know it all, I don't, I learn every single day, that comes into play. And with the Freight Fraud Task Force, and we have over 400 years of experience, when you look at that practical experience of being in the trenches, working at those places and understanding the mechanisms and how they work, whether it's in factoring or if it's manufacturing, distribution, the intricacies of the logistics mechanisms, how they turn and burn every single day from the inside out rather than the outside in, because it's unfortunate, but a lot of the brokers out there, 95 plus, have never even been in a warehouse, that brokers and shippers in most cases never met. They never had a handshake. They never saw each other. It's been on a phone. So by due diligence, you really have to take those precautionary steps in order to save your brand, image, and reputation. And I say that all the time because when you load a truck, if you were a broker or a factoring company and you allowed this kind of stuff, your brand, your image, and your reputation's inside that truck. Okay. Everybody that touched that truck, that put that carrier in place, because remember, the initiation of fraud starts at a shipper anywhere in the world. That's what starts the process. So if you're not on top of your game and you're not asking these pertinent questions and follow-ups to make sure that he or she is who they say they are when they back up, you're in deep trouble. You're in deep trouble more now than ever before.
Talk to me a little bit about the solution of the TWIC card. This is really interesting. How is that different from an MC number, a DOT number? Because part of the problem, from what I can tell, is that it's so easy to get your authority. Like there's almost no barrier to getting it. How would a TWIC card be different than that?
Cards were for the ports and all of that. That's some time ago. So when you think about that, you show your identification and this is you, here's your number, driver's license, all of that is all part of it. When you implement, a lot of good companies get a bad name when, they hired that person to represent them, but they didn't do it. The company didn't actually do it. They're just an accessory to it. When I say that is that they're guilty by association. Right. They didn't physically do that. So the CEO, the CFO, the president of that company, not all are engaged with the lower level people. I hate saying that, but that's what they are.
So it would be on the level of an individual.
Correct.
Not on the company. So the company has an authority.
No, everybody would be like, get a certification, get a TWIC card, and then any transaction, that identification number would be on every single transaction that they do. From the time they get that call to the time that they process and book that load and go. So anything that happens between the initiation of the load being presented to the broker, to the time that they book it, to the time the receiver receives whatever they're receiving, right? There's a track, there's a trace to that. And that puts that person who's doing the booking on high alert because either they get ahead. What I want to implement is a heavy fine or they get banned from the industry for the rest of their life. Because when you think about it, it's a huge fraudulent activity. If they're not on top of their game and not doing what they're supposed to do by due diligence, they should pay a penalty for that. They really should. And if they know that from the get-go when they get hired, it's going to bring down that level of, I wonder if I could do that. It would be not a thought.
It just totally raises the
corruption. The bar and saying, I may get a $50,000 fine for doing something like this. So you have to bring it, like I said, you have to bring the level of security down to who is doing the work, who's doing that. And it's just another step on that. Because I'm an ethical broker, I'm freight validated, I have facial recognition, background check, all that. I'm honest. My integrity and transparency is first and foremost. I'll tell you what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear, but a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, unfortunately, I can't say when they're wrong because it's not part of their upbringing or whatever. They'll fight to the end kind of thing. And that's not the way. That's an unethical approach to doing business. So now you got to put those barriers up that saying, no, you can't do that. You're unable to do this. And here's why. I just want to let you know that you come in here, you get a TWIC card. And if you do any fraudulent activities, we're going to be able to trace that back to you as the one that booked this freight. And by the way, if you're found guilty, it's a $20,000 fine, whatever, just throw something out there that's going to make them go, whoa,
I thought
serious stuff. And I'm just throwing this stuff out. That's the way that we think, because we have to outthink the thinkers. Sometimes you have to think like a thief. If I'm going to steal something, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
and then play out the scenario. It's just, I'm a proactive problem solver, meaning that I'll proactively think of an issue that's going to come up my whole career. What am I going to do if this happened? Because the way I think is that if you're a proactive thinker who looks at the abnormalities that might come up, it's better to be proactive than reactive. If you're reactive and the water's over the dam, you've lost it. You lost it. So that comes again with practical experience. Not everybody has that. It takes time. You're not going to learn that from the get-go. But that's how different people think of different things. It's what are the possibilities of this? And like we talked in the green room before we did the show, it's like this industry, you get blindsided every single day. Every day is different. You don't know what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. That's a guarantee. Every single day, something is going to happen. It's how you react to that issue and how fast you can resolve it that's going to prevent a lot of issues, not just for that day, but even for the following days after that. So that's why we think about this kind of stuff. And a lot of people in the Freight Fraud Task Force has that same mentality and passion about that. And that's when we start collaborating, we start thinking about that and saying, that's not a really good idea. That's a pretty damn good idea. When we start going with that flow.
If you were starting a trucking business, let's say within the last year, a lot of the times brokers won't want to work with someone who doesn't have at least 6 months or 12 months on their authority. What advice would you have for new carriers that are trying to get started, but they're having to wade through all of these new requirements that they have to get over in order to actually start doing business and doing good business? What are some of the ways that they can protect their business, but also stay above water?
Be honest with you, I wouldn't start one right now. This is not a good time to do it. And I'll use it as an example. During COVID, a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. Yeah. A lot of people made a lot of money, and they bought high because they thought it was just going to keep on going down the road, and that they were just their bank accounts were going to be overflowing with cash. And then something happened. We've been in this freight recession for a few years now, and it squeezed out, and a lot of carriers went bankrupt, turned in their keys, sold their trucks, still in debt because they bought high and everything. They didn't know how to budget their money in order to go over the obstacles and barriers that every carrier out there go through. And they thought short term, not long term. And we're in long term now. We don't know when that cycle is really going to end. Last year, I was saying that second quarter of this year. Now we're hearing the third quarter, even in the first quarter of 2026. It's a hard industry to break in right now. And then I know a little bit about this, but some of the biggest things that I know is that when you get your CDL license, the number one test on the test in order to get a CDL license is the pre-test or pre-check inspection on your vehicles. And a lot of these guys out there think it's one and done, but they don't have to do it after they get that on the test. I hate to break the news, but that is amazing.
No, it's every trip inspection.
Every time you bang that door, you have to do a pre-check inspection, not at your terminal and then just take off, because you can pick up road hazards, anything on those tires, anything on the way en route to that warehouse.
No, it's every time you're turning on that engine.
Every time before you haul. Every time at the shipper's door, when you bang that door, you have to do a pre-check inspection. And then you have to fill out DVIR, which is FMCSA 49 CFR 396.1, which is the DVIR. And then the pre-check inspection, which is a mandatory requirement from FMCSA, which is 49 CFR 392.7, right? That says you have to do a mandatory pre-check inspection on these 8 components. That's like the major ones that you're supposed to. You have to make sure that your truck is roadworthy before you roll. And here's a statistic that will just blow your mind. So at any given day, there's over 5 million trucks on our highways. Okay. Out of those 5 million trucks, 21.6 of them have been labeled OOS or unroadworthy. So OOS is out of service. That means that 1 in 5 trucks out there that you pass on the highway could virtually kill you. And just think about how many trucks, when you're on the highway and you pass them, every 5th one could just have
Should not be.
issue or tire blowing out and take you and your family out. That's a major concern of mine. And I want mandatory fines on that, like big fines, not like your first offense is $1,655. That's garbage. That's a slap on your wrist. These guys are driving 80,000-pound missiles out there that can just cause disaster. And the thing is, even with all the catastrophic events that are out there and the accidents, the way I look at it is it always takes a catastrophic event to change someone's mind. They could be like, oh, I'm not going to do it. Never, ever happen until it happens. And I hate to say it, if a driver's out there and he has a family and he knows that his family was just killed by another driver out there in the same business as him, because when the forensic investigators go out there and they look at the tires and they see a drive tire blew out and they look at the guy's forged pre-check inspection and he says, this guy just did a pre-check inspection and he said he had this depth in his tire. He ran 250 miles out and he's got bald tires. Boom, nuclear verdict or thermonuclear verdict, close down a company. It trickles down to dispatchers and owners of the company that should enforce these mandated rules and regulations that the driver's supposed to do every single day. If drivers are getting into the business and they think they don't need to do anything, just get behind the wheel, steer it, and collect money, they're in the wrong business. So
absolutely. What do you think are some of the drivers of that mindset? Because I know that enough about this industry, certainly not an expert, but have worked in enough industries to know that everything is about how the system works. So it's not necessarily just one bad actor, and it's not necessarily a moral failing of any one person,
right.
But it's a whole system that incentivizes people to try and deliver goods as quickly and cheaply as possible. And there's a lot of cost in that.
Ton of cost. It's when they're just getting by, when you think about that, like a $2 break even per mile, they're not making enough money to buy a set of tires. And they're like, ooh, yeah, you know what? I'm going to wait until I get to California from New Jersey. They push it. They're pushing the bar out there so far. And when I see drivers like that, I said, you know what? They're irresponsible people. They're irresponsible for themselves, their family, their fellow American, the shipper, the broker, their business owner. When you think about that, right? Because how can you be a responsible person if you're not taking those additional steps as mandated by FMCSA and also on the state level as well to do these pre-check inspections, and they don't do it? If you can't afford to run your truck and run it right and invest into your equipment, especially the owner-operators. The owner-operators, they have a higher probability of doing that, but when you're working for an individual, I've even heard drivers say that and say this, I don't get paid to do that. Really? You don't get paid to do that. So you want to risk your life and take the food off your family's table because you don't get paid to do the pre-check inspection. You're not going to do it. Come on, guys. I don't know. That, to me, that's really irritating. It happens out there, and it's not a single incident. It happens all the time. I was just talking to a couple drivers on one of my friends' podcasts, and he says, no, that's not happening at a warehouse or a shipper. It's happening at truck stops, any place. These guys are not doing it. When I say, let me reframe. Women and men are not doing it. And it takes 15 to 20 minutes to do a walk around and just check out the things that you can see. We're not asking you to go and break down the engine and do all this other kind of stuff. No, the tires, the brakes, the lights, horn, windshield wipers, just those kind of things. It doesn't take that long when something's operational, when things are not operational. And the mandate says that your equipment has to be in operational order in order to move that freight, that things have to be in order and working as they should in order to protect yourself and the people around you and the product. And like I mentioned earlier, all stakeholders that are around that. And it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. I don't know why.
When you're onboarding or going to work with a new carrier with your business, what are some of the questions you ask? What are some of the things that you check for to make sure that this company has a culture of doing the pre-trip inspection, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, making sure that they're not going to double cross or double broker?
Sure.
What are some of the things that you're asking and looking out for when working with those carriers?
Real quick, some of my connections that may have used that carrier that comes in highly recommended, because we do that and they're trustworthy. I would do that. Apologize. I would do that. I use Freight Validate, the vetting tool on that. I did some beta testing on a lot of different tools out there. And if one vetting tool says one thing, I'll back it up with another to see if it's consistent and if they're saying the same thing. Some have overkill, which I love when you have trailing documentations that take the emotion out of the decision making and it says it is or isn't. You know, you're looking at data saying this one did this, it's CSA scores, all this other kind of stuff. And you look at another one that just says unapproved. You go, well, why? Or approved. Like I've ran into it where one vetting said approved, no trailing documents or anything on that statistic wise or anything like that. And I look at another one that said unapproved. This guy did this and did this. Here's the documentation on that. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. Like way back in the day, we met each other. Carriers, I used to have a ton of carriers, like well over 1,000 carriers at that time. And I met a plethora of them. And we went to lunch, handshake, that emotional intelligence of being able to see them. And when they're looking in your eye and you're having that cordial conversation and know that they're telling the truth and you get that firm handshake. It was like an ironclad contract without the contract being written, never had any kind of problems. Now you've got a lot of, I'll say, illegals, or people coming into the business that have ill intentions, that steal MC numbers or buy MC numbers in the black market and try to get away with that, changing the registrations constantly all the time. If they get caught, they get a brand new MC number on a whole different name in a whole different location. You have to be able to follow that. You have to have that documentation and be able to dive into that to see that trail. Oh, this one's
and be consistent, right?
But this person was with this company and he owned it. Now he's affiliated with this one. And now you got this one here. And this is a newly registered one, but this guy already had a company, just closed it down. Those are the kind of things that you have to really delve into. You get underneath the weeds. And like I said earlier.
Right. And this guy's been based in 3 different major American cities in the last year. What's that about?
And the thing is, like I said, it's your brand image and reputation that's at stake with every single shipment. And knock on wood, I could get screwed tomorrow. And because I let my barriers down, and there's just nothing's going to happen to me. And then boom. But I've been, knock on wood, I've been very fortunate. Just because you talk to a carrier, you have to talk to them multiple times and then look at the owners. And you could a lot of them are on LinkedIn, but you could look them up on Safer Web. You can go to many different sources to double check. And that's why it's highly important that if you have a big business that you hire a really good procurement manager or support staff that has been in the business the whole time, that have a book of carriers, not a book of business, but a book of carriers that they've done business with that are fully vetted. And the other thing too, I must add, is just because they're vetted and good today doesn't mean they'll be the same tomorrow. Even if you've known them, they could have an incident that they didn't tell you about, that their CSA scores went down. Why? But if you didn't check on that and you put them out there and they get into another accident, that's on you because you didn't do the vetting properly. You didn't look into all areas of the possibilities where issues can come up. And you have to be on top of your game constantly all the time. You do, that you can't let your blinders down. You can't walk and have tunnel vision. You can't have that. You got to look at the big pictures. Again, that comes with the practical experience and the things that you may have seen or watched, part of, that you don't want to be part of, speaking, that we can't do that. Here's the reason why. That never happened to me because it never happened to you, but there's a possibility that it could happen to you. And these are the additional steps that you need to take. And you need to take them every single day, or at least once a week or whatever.
And I think all of this applies back from the carrier vetting the brokers that they're working with too.
Oh yeah, they have to.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Carriers should vet brokers. Brokers should vet shippers, because not all shippers are good shippers, right? Shippers should be vetting their assets. They're going directly to the asset carriers. Do background checks on the brokers that they're doing business with. Look at their profiles. Do they have the practical experience and background? Have they ever worked in a warehouse? Do they know logistics? How long have they been in there? What are their niches? It just goes on and on. And when I was in that position, that's what I used to do when I went out to brokers or assets. I want to know who they were, who my rep was. If my rep was the guy that was going to take care of my business, or if he was going to hand it off to somebody I never met. There's so many different things and steps that you can take. And again, if I was a shipper, you want to know who you're partnering with, because it's like a family. Hopefully they're going to be there for long term. So you got to get to know them. If you're using a factoring company, not all factoring companies are good factoring companies.
They certainly are not.
So you have to vet your factoring companies as well. They could run with your money too. They could hold off paying you as well. They could just be a run of the night that just came overseas, that just opened up a business and has no plans to operate past 3 months and just rake in the cash for 3 months and adios, they're gone, just vanish. These are things you have to do. There's so many things you have to do in logistics. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about some of the tech that you like working with when you're working with carriers. So things like tracking. We talked a little bit about these tools that are not enough to completely do away with all freight fraud, but that certainly help and give you some semblance of evidence that your freight's going where it needs to go.
Yeah, there's so many different ones out there. I'm not going to promote them and stuff like that, but it all depends on, you got to vet them as well. What are you looking for? Every company doesn't have the same kind of abilities as everybody else, right? Some are niche. Some don't doing one thing than the other. When you can't have multiple tracking kind of thing, it's an overkill. It's not money being spent. So you have to have those conversations with those tracking companies as far as, are you seeing eye to eye with them? Are they going to be able to meet your requirements, even with geofencing and all this other kind of stuff that you need, especially on high value, high risk shipments that are out there? That could be very costly if you happen to make a mistake. If it's big business, you want to meet them. You want them to come over to your company and have a sit down and start discussing, so they can learn more about your business. You can learn more about their business. What would work, what wouldn't work. Just because you want tracking, you don't want to jump into the fire and saying, that sounds good, I'll start working with you. No, it's not that easy, especially when you've got $1 million loads. Doesn't matter, any kind of load that you're doing, whatever needs tracking, you should vet them also.
And if you were running, let's say you're running a small fleet today, you've got a couple of years under your belt, that's a lot of people that we're working with at Bobtail. They've got a couple of trucks, maybe they have up to 10 trucks that they're operating. They've got at least a year under their belt. What are the main things that you would be focusing on as a small carrier to land solid, profitable freight?
Boy, if I was in that position, I'd be asking questions on the shipper. There's a lot of fraudulent activity that happens between that, when you're trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes and you're not really telling them how the operation works and the hours, and it only takes an hour to load you up, when they're thinking, oh, that's not long, so we can give them a better price on the shipment, and then it takes 2 or 3 hours to load. Hours of operation. And I won't bring it out, but I have a 169-point checklist for shippers to fill out, that I would have them fill it out, and I'd be total transparent. This is what the shipper gave me, and I would send it off to the carriers. We're looking at apples to apples rather than apples to oranges and what to expect. And then when they come back and they give me the rate, and I go back, no, this is what you gave me. So I gave them in order to give you a good rate, because now they know what to expect. Like the drop trailers and picking up at midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not a 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll be home. See you in a little bit, honey, that kind of deal. It's like, those are the type of things. And when they lie and say that a shipment only weighs 28,000 pounds and actually weighs 44,000 pounds, because they're trying to decrease their cost. And it's, oh, yeah, but you know what? We had this last minute thing. I figured I had a 53 footer. I know I could go to 44. I didn't think it was a big deal. When they put more stuff on it, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
What is your response to that when you've got your customers that just don't do that, but it sounds like that's something that you've dealt with in the past. What is it how do you respond to something like that? Do you not know how physics works?
It's not that. The thing is that I don't lie. Let's see, many years ago, I was working for this company, and the CEO asked me to change the classification on a bill of lading, because if you have a classification of, say, 400, that's light and that's more expensive on that. The lower the rate classification, you start getting a little bit more density and all that, you get better freight rates on that. So the stuff that was getting shipped was like a class 300. And he goes, no, I want you to put it as 77.5. This isn't that, because it's going to go through weight and inspection when you put that on there, and then you can get red flagged. And they're not going to want to pick up your products or anything. So I actually went into the CEO offices. It was long drawn up, but I'm trying to make it simple. And I said, I told him, hey, John, you can't do this or whatever. Well, I don't care. I pay you the money. And if I want you to do it, you go and do it. And I said, I quit. I said, I know I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I'm not going to put any fraudulent stuff on it because my name's on that. My name is on that building. You can't do that. I said, I sure can. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell the carrier exactly what you're doing. Then I did. I'm very transparent. And next thing, they cut off the valve on him and nobody was going in there until he changed his practices. And I learned a lot of stuff back there. And I don't know how to really answer your question because I was on the shipper side. I never did that to anybody. They never had that problem. I have recommendations from many different carriers on my LinkedIn profile that say who I am, that would back me up. I treated everybody very fairly, and a lot of them were friends. So that's the kind of relationship that we built. We didn't build it for the day. We built it long term for many years. That because they learned and understood how I operated, and I knew exactly how they operated. So it was like a match made in heaven, and we never really had any problems with that. But today, with the lack of training out there and all of that, and the high pressure to save money, like I said, desperate people do desperate things in really bad conditions. So it's I can't really answer that because I was never in that. I would say if I was a carrier, you really need to check them out. Like I said, vet your shippers. There's a thing that we used to use in the past, which was a preferred shipper and a preferred carrier. You get that status by being honest. It's just like when you have overseas shipment and it comes into the port and you have your origin and you're supposed to itemize everything to tell what is in what carton. And if you don't have the right stuff in the right carton, they red flag you. Every shipment that comes in from overseas will be tagged inspection. It's going to cost you a lot of money with the steamship lines that are out there that, are moving your product because it's holding up the business because you have to get it back. It's the same thing. Don't try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes and think you're going to save some money. It's going to cost you a lot of money in the long run. It's just like cheap freight. And I have this thing in the back there that says cheapest is the most expensive way to conduct business, because if you want to save $700 on a load, it only takes one catastrophic event to close your business. And that $700 savings is going to be the most expensive savings that you've ever spent, because it could be millions of dollars. So do you want to take that risk? Do you want a quality broker with a high quality carrier that getting paid fairly, that's going to do exactly what you want and be delivered on time? That's the question of any owner out there who's a shipper that wants service and know that their business is secured every time that you move it with that carrier. That's what you have to think. And to me, it's not a risk worth taking to try to save money and to dive to the bottom in this. I'm not going to. I know what my value is. I won't devalue my value. I was on their side, and I have arguments with shippers a lot of times. And it's just like they try to act like they know more than I was. Like, how long have you been doing it for? I've been doing it for 37 years for XYZ company. When I talk to them, because I can talk to them on that language. And that's what they pay me to do. They are literally paying me to tell them when they're wrong, because it's my job as a service provider to protect them at all costs. And a lot of people out there don't understand that. They don't. They just think of profits over service. It's terrible.
Short-term profits. That's sort of the key here, because you're not, with that kind of mentality, you're never going to have long-term profits, right?
Yep.
Jeff, thank you so much. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you would like to impart on our carrier audience?
No, just one thing that we talked earlier about the Freight Fraud Task Force. We are growing. We have a lot of directors that are on board, also in Canada as well. We have a team that are taking our narrative and going to do it in Canada. Keep following the Freight Fraud Task Force. Follow myself, Jeff Dickinson, on LinkedIn for updates on that. A lot of changes are going to happen in the very near future. We won't tell you how we're doing it, but we'll tell you about our achievements. And if you have that passion and drive, like my team has, and you want to defeat freight fraud on a national level, on all ends and you want to join us, please reach out to us. If you have the experience level and you want to serve a great organization, a nonprofit one with a bunch of great people, highly trained people with a lot of experience, I'll be happy to talk to you, and we'd love to have you on the team. The more the merrier. And that goes for vetting companies out there too. If you want to collaborate with us and join forces, reach out. You can talk to any one of my co-founders and any of my directors. Like I said, we have many divisions that we're going to cover, and we're going to take care of every single point in fraud. We really will.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to come back again if you have me.
Let's do it. All right.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody, and drive safe.